former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor Giuliani, thanks for joining me, sir.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, talk to me first, sir. You have been the target. I mean, we're talking about mainstream media here. You've been the target of Joe Biden trying to get you blacklisted from other television networks here. It is a little bit funny if it's not so scary. Why are they trying to silence you, sir?
I agree. I should not laugh, Liz, because actually it's quite serious. It's one of the reasons, one of many, why we're seriously considering a major lawsuit against many of the Democrats, because I believe that they have conspired for quite some time now to deprive the president of his civil rights. They're conducting really a rogue rump kind of hearing that's completely unauthorized. They didn't take a vote for an impeachment proceeding. They're calling it a formal impeachment proceeding, which is a false statement. Now, there's consequences to not voting. The president doesn't get the right to call witnesses, or at least the Republicans don't. The Sixth Amendment of the Constitution gives you the right of compulsory process. So they've deprived him of that right. They deprived him of the right to face his accuser because they're keeping the whistleblower secret. And not only that, the whistleblower, as far as we can tell from the complaint, doesn't have any information because he begins in the third paragraph of the complaint saying, "I don't have any direct knowledge." Well, that means every bit of the knowledge thereafter is hearsay, which is inherently unreliable. I mean, they're yelling and screaming about how Shokin's accuser is unreliable, crooked or whatever. But at least he's come forward, and he wants to testify. He's willing to face Joe Biden and point at him and say, "You're a big crook." But nobody wants to talk to him. They just say he's unreliable. Well, how do they know? They've never investigated it, I don't think. Maybe they did. I don't see any investigation anywhere. So this is a very, very illegal, really disgraceful proceeding by these Democrats. And it's really amazing how the corrupt press just tolerates this and enables them to do this.
Right. I mean, I take it a step further. I don't think the mainstream media just tolerates it.
It's very sad.
They enable the Democrat politicians to be able to do this because without the defense, the Democrats might not feel so comfortable telling these lies. Mayor, let me ask you about something that you said. So you talk about how there's legal issues with how the Democrats are engaging in this impeachment inquiry. You have received a subpoena from the House Democrats, which you said on Twitter raises serious legal issues. Do you intend to respond to that subpoena?
You know, if I were representing a terrorist and Congress gave me a subpoena for all my material that I developed as a lawyer for that terrorist defense, the ACLU would condemn the Congress for violating the constitutional rights of the terrorist. If they do that for the President of the United States, and I'm just supposed to turn it over and get disbarred, they want to disbar me anyway. If I turn this material over without going through the proper procedures, I would be disbarred. And they'd be the first ones to try to do it. So I'm not a fool. What they're doing is, it's not coincidental they're going after Attorney General Barr and me. Attorney General Barr is his top government lawyer, as well as the chief law enforcement officer of the country. They're threatening him with arrest, which is maybe actionable because it was done outside of the halls of Congress. They are calling foreign leaders and telling them not to cooperate with them. That could amount to obstruction of justice, a lot more serious than Mueller ever talked about. They're actually telling foreign leaders not to turn over information. They say to dig up dirt on his opponent. How about to dig up information about serious criminal charges? When you obstruct that, that gets very close to obstruction of justice. It certainly deprives him of the right to have these charges investigated properly. They're trying to impeach him based on his exercising his duty under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, which they either haven't read or they burned, because it says that the president has to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. If there's an allegation that a vice president of the United States set up a scheme with his son to get $5 million from a crooked Ukrainian oligarch, while that vice president was giving out money in the Ukraine to the tune of $5-6 billion, you can forget about whether Shokin's telling the truth or this one's telling the truth. That's an alleged serious crime.
Right.
It needs to be investigated to vindicate the United States. Do you realize how we are disrespected in China and in Ukraine? Because when we go there and lecture them on corruption, they're not hiding it like our corrupt press. They are sensible people. They could be crooked, but they're sensible. They can see a corrupt scheme, and they know exactly what happened. Nobody believes that this corrupt Ukrainian oligarch hired Hunter Biden 2 months out of being kicked out of the Navy for failing a drug test for his expertise. He wasn't worth $5 million. Joe Biden's office was worth $5 million. And if you think the Chinese put $1.5 billion in a private equity fund with Hunter Biden and Whitey Bulger's nephew, who extraordinarily was their partner, then I can sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, the Chinese government and the Chinese people that were their partners, he was partners with the Chinese government. They knew exactly what they were spending the $1.5 billion on. They
right, I mean, it's hard to argue otherwise.
The Vice President of the United States.
Right, it's hard to argue that it looks like anything other than influence peddling. Let me ask you this, sir. When you're looking at this, this evidence of corruption, or this picture that looks an awful lot like influence peddling, using the office of the Vice President of the United States not only to enrich his own family, but perhaps to impact the foreign policy of the United States, what do you believe is the most important question that needs to be asked to reveal the truth in this whole shebang?
I think we have to get the records of the money transfers. I've investigated successfully people far more skilled at committing crimes than the intellectually challenged Bidens. They're kind of like small-time crooks that happen to strike it rich. You got to follow the money. I saw one transfer of money to Hunter Biden that went from Ukraine to Latvia to Cyprus. That's called money laundering. And then to the Biden company. I want to know, that accounts for $3 million. I want to see how much more he got that way. In and of itself, money laundering is a federal crime. I'd like to see how the money from China came into the private equity fund. I think there are other deals with China. They have to be investigated. This cannot be brushed under the rug, because we really can't be taken seriously by China or Ukraine if we cover up for politicians who go there and engage in this kind of massive corruption. Just think of it. President Obama sent Biden to Ukraine to help, in part, to straighten out the corruption. So he goes and lectures them on corruption. And they all sit there laughing behind his back saying, hey, pal, you're just as corrupt as we are. You want us to believe that son has been given $5-6 million from the most crooked oligarch in our country, who ends up, as a result of your bribing the president, he ends up keeping his $5 billion? You know, nobody notices that 2 other cases were dismissed. The oligarch got to keep his $5 million as a result of Joe's corruption, and George Soros' company, their case was dismissed. Now, that's what I'm really upset about, because that company is the company that was delivering dirty information, some of it false, some of it exaggerated, and some of it irrelevant, but dirty information on the Trump campaign. Not only that, it's backed up by a court decision in the Ukraine in 2018. I'm not making it up. Go read the court decision. But our lazy or corrupt press doesn't look at any of these things. They say it's unreliable. The only way you can figure out if it's unreliable is investigate it. And I question whether the State Department even investigated it, because these witnesses, I don't think, have ever been questioned. I've never been questioned. I got a pile of material about that big.
Well, that brings me to my next question, sir. My next question is there more damning information on the Democrats in Congress, specifically the Democrats like Adam Schiff in the House Intelligence Committee, or Joe Biden and his family, that's going to drop? Because I ask this because we have seen over the course of the past 2 weeks that every 24 hours something new, usually something that's negative about the Democrats or Biden, has come unearthed. Is there more to come?
Well, there's plenty more to come in the lawsuit, but I can't reveal it now because we're about 10 days away from really compiling what you would call a working draft and then making a decision. But I can tell you there's more on Joe Biden to come, sure. I'll give you a little hint. Now, these are things I haven't investigated. I'm telling you things I read. The part about Burisma and Ukraine and colluding in the election, I have investigated. I have the corroboration. I've never been asked for it. When the Secretary of State told me the State Department was going to investigate this, maybe they did, but they never asked me for the rest of my material. And as far as I know, they never questioned the key witnesses. Now, they could have, and I don't know that. So I have to be careful about that, and I hope I'm wrong about that.
Well, what is the corroboration that you have?
The corroboration I have are other prosecutors saying the same things as the first prosecutor said. Namely, I mean, it's as clear as the nose on your face that Biden bribed Poroshenko to get his son out of trouble. As clear as that. I mean, you'd have to be a fool not to know that. You'd have to be a fool to think he did it because he was worried about a corrupt prosecutor. When he had a scheme like this with his son, he's really worried about a corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine? And you want me to believe that? I mean, this is the guy that, you know, took on the mafia, the Teamsters, Milken, Boesky.
I mean, Biden did admit it himself on video. We have Biden's own words saying this.
Biden admitted what in a law school class you would describe as prima facie bribery.
Right.
The crime of bribery is offering something of value in exchange for official action. Joe Biden said, I strong-armed that guy. I told him, you don't get your $1.2 billion unless you fire the prosecutor, the son of a... And when he said no, I said, if you don't do it in 6 hours, I'm leaving with your money. He offered something of value, $1.2 billion loan guarantee to a struggling country in exchange for official action, firing the prosecutor. The son, it's just the icing on the cake in terms of a prosecutor. It's the motivation. You don't need motivation for the crime of bribery. It just makes it a lot more serious. So all this discussion about whether he knew about the son or he didn't know about the son, which is of course absurd. Only the most craven Democrats would believe that, or their lackeys. But it doesn't matter. He admitted prima facie bribery, and these people don't want to investigate it because it's Joe Biden.
Right.
Protected class.
There's another element of that, too. When the Biden camp or his surrogates claim that his behavior did not warrant investigation, they're quoting the Ukrainian prosecutor who took the place of the one that Biden got fired and bragged about getting fired. So their source here is just a little,
God bless you.
Exactly, just a little bias here. Mayor Giuliani, let me ask you about some of the Democrats' attacks on you. So, given all of the media firestorm and all the attacks that you've received from Adam Schiff and the Democrats in the House Intel Committee, how do you answer critics who wonder why the president's personal attorney versus a member of his administration was coordinating with Ukraine on investigating the Biden scandal?
Maybe because I was the only one who would do it. I wouldn't be a member of his administration, but you have to understand what my witnesses told me. My witnesses have been trying to get this information to us for 1.5 years. If we had gotten it earlier, we may have been able to head off the entire Mueller fiasco. They wouldn't give it to anybody else. They had tried to get it to the FBI for the longest time. They had tried to get it to the Justice Department, hired a lawyer to do that, and they were rebuffed. I have a very good reputation in Ukraine. I have a reputation as being a crime fighter all over the world. I probably, and I'm trying not to boast, but I probably have had more significant prosecutions as a U.S. attorney than just about anybody. The mafia, Nazis, terrorists, Wall Street, numerous corrupt politicians. So they trusted me. And I couldn't bring it to the FBI because they didn't trust the FBI. So I felt what I had to do on behalf of my client. And remember, it came to me in November of 2018. The Mueller probe was still going on. So I investigated this purely as a defense lawyer, developing information that could exonerate my client, which if I didn't do it, I'd be a scoundrel of a defense lawyer and an just reputable one. And I did it long before Joe Biden announced for president. So I was supposed to say to myself, I'm going to turn down evidence that's given to me that can clear my client because Joe Biden is sitting somewhere and deciding whether to run for president. And he looked to me like he couldn't walk across the street, much less run for president. So I wasn't thinking about his running for president. Just to prove that, if you look at the outline that the State Department released yesterday, It was submitted on March 28, 2019. I was done with the investigation for a month before that. That's before the Mueller investigation ended, so I was still gathering information to defend him. I didn't need it because Mueller fell apart. And number two, he still hadn't announced for president. So they're making this up, Liz. It's provable by the records that I was doing it as a defense lawyer. But he's not allowed to have a defense lawyer, much less an attorney general. He can't be defended. He just should have admitted Russian collusion and been impeached, even though it was false. And even though they probably made that up too. Russian collusion is something that was invented, I believe, in the Obama White House, and then worked out with Italy, UK, Ukraine, Australia. That's why you see the attorney general in these places trying to get information from them. And the Democratic senators who are telling them not to cooperate are coming real close to obstruction of justice, my friend, real close. Because this is a criminal investigation. Make no mistake about it. This is not trying to get dirt on what would be a truly pathetic presidential candidate. The guy can't put two sentences together. Has he had a press conference about this, Liz?
He has not. He has not. He's barely mentioned it, and he's cut back on his digital ad buys.
What do you think would happen to him if he sat through one of those 2-hour, when you have a scandal, you have to have one of those 2-hour press conferences? You think he'd make it through the 2-hour press conference without incriminating himself even more? I mean, he's his own worst enemy. I don't know if anybody would have paid attention to this if he didn't brag and admit prima facie bribery. He did something else that's very damaging. He made a false exculpatory statement. That's the classical evidence of guilty knowledge when you prosecute somebody. The false exculpatory statement is, I never talked to my son about his business. Well, that's clearly false, because he didn't have to talk to his son about his business. His son's business was being exposed in the newspapers and criticized. He'd have to make us believe he not only didn't talk to his son about his business, he'd have to have us believe that he didn't read the newspapers for 30 years about his brother and his son.
You'd have to be pretty stupid not to believe that when his son Hunter traveled with him on Air Force Two to China just days before Hunter signed the $1.2 billion equity deal with the Chinese. There's a photograph of them all on the golf course together, Hunter and Hunter's business partner and Biden. There's a lot more here than meets the eye.
Don't you think the reason they do that, and hopefully if we ever get over this, we write a book about it and explain it, don't they do it because they've gotten sloppy? Because the press gives them a complete pass, so they think they can do anything they want, like the Clintons.
Exactly.
Like the whole pattern is just like the Clinton Foundation. I think the next investigation is how much of this was going on in the Obama administration, and why didn't Obama stop this when he found out about it?
Right.
Why?
If only these questions were asked. Mayor Giuliani.
Another good question.
Thank you so much for being on the show, sir. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Liz. You do a good job.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Coming up next.